Just kidding, but seriously, I don't know if you're aware of it, but when, God asks people to do things like Ashlyn hosting this conference and like Seth, Tasha, and I standing up here and everyone else, there's a warfare that goes on. Because the enemy don't really want you doing this. He don't even want you giving up your Saturday to learn about beauty within. That's, so he's trying to distract you, discourage you, and anything else. But you got to push through. And so I had to push through, and if I hadn't pushed through, then I wouldn't have been able to stand up here and genuinely talk to you about self-love and know what it really means. It was funny because I didn't think I was struggling with self-love. So when God started pointing out things, I was like, oh, I'm struggling. Like, I didn't even really understand what self-love meant. I knew, on the core, but it's much deeper than what you think. So God was telling me things I was doing that didn't demonstrate self-love, and I was like, man, I didn't notice. And to be honest, I was mad. I was angry because as he was telling me about self-love, these were things I was supposed to be changing. And the funny thing is, I'm over here praying like, Lord, change me. I need to live out my purpose, do what you need to do. Then over here, I'm like, wait a minute. We didn't discuss the change before it happened. What type of change you're trying to do? I don't know if I'm ready for this change, So, I was being really contradicting in my prayers. But I think God knew that when I got down on my knees and began to pray, because my spirit knew that was a change needed to happen on the inside of me, but my flesh wasn't ready. It wasn't ready. It was just resisting everything. But God's going to get his way anyway. Amen. You can wear yourself out all you want to, but he's still going to do what he want to do. So, as I talked to God about what Ashlyn asked me to do and prayed, I felt like he gave me 8 steps guaranteed to lead you on a journey of self-love. And they're in your brochures as well, so you can you'll see them there. But I felt like he gave me 8 steps that would lead me on a journey to self-love. And one thing I want to share is that I went through a period of time where I was in a depression, and nobody knew it. I made sure nobody knew it. I mean, when I say nobody, I mean nobody. Like people I talk to every day. I did what I needed to do to not alarm anybody. And so I'm going to share some of that story as I go through these 8 steps. And the very first step is we got to know what self-love is. We have to know what self-love is about. And so, like, someone tell me, what does self-love mean to you? Love yourself. That you love yourself. Someone else?
That you respect yourself.
Right. That you respect yourself. I thought about self-love, and I broke it down into the 2 words, self and love. Okay, so I said self is me, the person God created. And love, love is an action or choice. It's more than like, and it's something you're doing that says, I'm encouraging myself to be who God said I am. Yeah, I'm promoting I'm making choices that promote who God said I am. And so that's what I said self-love is. But then I went to Google. And I don't know about y'all, but I love Google. Yeah. Look, don't get in trouble with Google. You can start self-diagnosing yourself. But I went to Google, and I'm a words person, so I started looking up different words. Even the simplest of words, I like to Google the definition. Because I think sometimes I want to just understand what words are using to define it, especially if it's a word I feel like God's given me. I want to really know what he's saying to me. And so I found a few definitions, but the one that really stuck out to me was from Psychology Today. And I felt like it was what Ashlyn really wanted us to get from this day. And it said that self-love is a state of appreciation of oneself that grows from actions that support our physical, psychological, and spiritual growth. So I felt like that fit perfectly for today. And I was like, okay. And that was really what we've said too. Loving yourself, respecting yourself, making choices and actions that show that love and that respect. So that's kind of what we said too. And I said, okay, so now I know what self-love is. So then God was like, okay, so you're ready for step 2 on your journey, which is evolving into who God meant for you to truly be. Now, how can you evolve into who God meant for you to be if you don't know who he meant for you to be.
Amen.
You know? And if you're like me, then you're probably thinking about that, especially if you're struggling right now to know your purpose or anything else. You're probably thinking about that, and you're making it really much harder than what it is. God says in his word who we are. And it's so funny because I was sitting there listening to Seth and Ashley, and I was like, did he just put us all on the same page? Because the thing he said is, we are fearfully and wonderfully made. Like, that's who we are. We are royalty. We have an inheritance in him.
Amen.
You know, he knew us before we were in our mother's womb. We're prosperous. You know, he's not out here to hurt us. What he tells us to do isn't to harm us. It's to prosper us. You know, to give us hope and a future. We have a future. If he says, I want to prosper you and give you hope in a future, that means you have a future. So we are women who are fearfully and wonderfully made. We are beautiful. We are royalty. We are queens. And you cannot hold that crown on your head if it's held down. So we have to walk with our heads up and know who God truly meant for us to be on this earth. And we've got to evolve into that person. And you have to think, how am I operating and making choices that allow you to evolve into that person daily? Like, what am I doing? What choices am I making that's saying that I'm royalty, I'm fearfully and wonderfully made, I'm beautiful, you know, I have an inheritance in Christ? What choices am I making daily that says that's, you know, what God is saying about us? And one funny thing is, I remember venting about a friend, and I remember God saying, why are you venting about what she doing and about how she loving herself when you not even loving yourself the way you're supposed to be? You know, you're not even loving who I said you were. So why are you looking at her and doing those things? And I realized that I wasn't. I mean, and I'm going to talk about that a little later, but I really realized I wasn't. And one of the things he taught me this year is that you have to live a healthy and balanced life. If you're not at your best, how can you give anyone else your best? If you are not at your best, how are you going to give anyone else your best? How is it going to happen? You're not filled to even pour out. You can't be empty and pour out anything. It's just not going to happen. And let me say something right here. Self-love is not selfish nor self-centered. Choosing yourself is not selfish. Well, it can be selfish, but it's a healthy selfish. It's something that needs to happen if you're going to do what God is calling you to do in this world. If you're not making choices that really just say, okay, this right here ain't aligning with what God said. I can't do this no more. And how many of you have ever experienced somebody calling you selfish because you chose yourself? Yeah. I have too. And it's funny because this year I made a lot of what some seem selfish choices, you know. But I had to make them in order to be here today. If I didn't make those selfish choices, I would be still struggling trying to figure out who Sheree was, what God wanted Sheree to do. I would sit up here and let somebody, whatever said who I am, I'd just be believing that and walking in that instead of walking in who God created me to be. You know, you don't want to walk in labels. You want to walk in genuinely who God says you are. And you can't know that unless you seek him. You know, you can't know that unless you seek him. So it brings us to our next step, the third step, which is love. Loving who you are. Loving the person God created. He's not offering any refunds. He's not offering any refunds, so you might as well love her, and you might as well love her with everything that you have, flaws and all. God can use those things. What you're seeing as a flaw is for somebody else. They need to hear what you're going through because they may feel like, man, I'm struggling and I don't know anybody else going through this. But you're going through the very same thing for a reason to talk to them about it once God brings you through. Or even as he brings you through. Because I feel like, I really believe that when we share our testimonies as we go through, he begins bringing us out even more. And it makes the enemy so mad. I think at my roughest points is when I start writing or I'll do a video. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and just start talking about this now because I know this storm won't last forever, you know?
Amen.
So you have to really love that person who God created. And as I was saying earlier, once I was unknowingly judging a friend, I felt like she was allowing people to mistreat her. I went to God about it. He shut me right up. He got me right together. And I remember he sent me to this verse. It was Matthew 7:5. And he said, and it basically called me a hypocrite. And he said, how dare you talk about the speck in your friend's eye where you have a log in your own? And see, what stood out to me was, I was like, so she only got a little speck, like, so you saying like she only got a little bit of dust, you know, dust flying in your eye, that's all she got, but you saying I got this huge log? So really I'm the blind one, because here I am judging her when I'm not seeing what's going on in my own life, the choices I'm making. And yes, I did have it together where I wasn't allowing anybody externally to mistreat me. You know, oh, no, you're not going to do that. You know, I had that together. But internally, what choices was I making? You know, the biggest harm is done internally. The things people can't see. The things you're harboring in your mind and heart. It's more detrimental to you than anything happening external. You know, that anything you're taking in from somebody else. We're our own worst enemies. So I was sitting here judging my friend, but I was failing in self-love as well. What were my daily habits and thoughts? Did they exist?